This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to our OCP Telco Edge call for May 9th. So I kind of have a proposed agenda up here. Before we get started, does anybody have anything they would like to add to the agenda? Anybody? All right. Well, if there's nothing to add, then I guess let's go ahead and we'll get started with kind of what I threw up here. So some administrative things. Um, so I think we have a new member, Mitch Wright. I'm not sure if I saw him join. Um, but then also I kind of wanted to point everybody. So there's the OCP Global Summit coming up in October. And so right now the call for papers is open. Um, so, if anybody's interested in submitting a topic in a paper, please see the emails that have been being sent out for those requests and how to register and those kinds of things. So I'm planning on attending. I'm working on getting all of the travel approval. Um, so hopefully I'll be able to kind of meet some of you folks out there in October. Does anybody want to talk about any other administrative things? No?
Hey, John, I think
Yeah.
if we have anybody who attended the regional summit, it might be
Yeah,
interesting to
that,
hear
that was,
points
that was
here.
going to be my next bullet point, right? Is the regional summit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, gotcha.
You're one step ahead of me, Craig.
I'm sorry.
No worries. So let's go ahead and jump to bullet point 2 then. So regional summit. So as Craig was saying, would anybody like to talk if they have any comments, suggestions, were there, watched the videos, anything like that? Maybe kind of provide the group some input.
Okay,
Craig, did you?
Samuel Tola here. Hope you can hear me
Yeah, we hear you.
this time. Okay, I was participating that regional summit and we had actually 3 presentations by Nokia in that summit, and I think that it was, of course, it was much smaller than global summit as event, but anyways, there was a lot of good discussion in edge side. Of course, in addition of our presentations, there was a lot of discussion about synchronization topic, what is relevant for edge and many other interesting presentations there. So I really recommend that watch those videos or check those materials.
Now you kind of presented some of the material that was going to be presented there on our call last time. Did you get any kind of feedback on kind of, you guys were starting to look at kind of this liquid cooling concept and these types of things.
Yeah,
Any feedback?
yeah, for sure it was something that many people, many companies were interested, and it was very big topic in that event. Event there were a lot of companies having components for liquid cooling and different solutions for liquid cooling and kind of we discussed in that presentation about that and feasibility in smaller scale. In many cases, those components what are designed are for bigger data centers, and of course, if we go to the edge with liquid cooling, there are we need to scale it for that purpose, not for big data center purpose. So it's something that of course our target is continue that work and analyze and find components. I think that Lucas is much more expert in that area than me, but for sure it's something that we continue and we have target to continue with the version of white paper related to that liquid cooling in edge topic in future.
And do you think that it complicates the hardware that's out there, right? So there's going to be more potentials for something to misfunction, or something could happen to the cooling. You know, do you kind of see that there needs to be some management kind of around this as well, in terms of being able to kind of detect if something is starting to go bad, or these types of things? Is that
Yeah,
something?
yeah, I agree that of course we need to know if there is something going wrong in cooling and if we have that kind of cooling system where we have partially liquid cooled, we need to get information about that. But this is something that is kind of early phase for open edge to kind of analyze and find solution for that. And for sure it helps then in those hardest environmental situations and also is benefit for energy efficiency, what is very important topic and being in future even more important. So there are a lot of benefits, but of course a lot of challenges, and it's something that is easier maybe in bigger scale to find solution compared to the smaller one. But I think that anyways it's something that helps in many other areas like acoustic noise and that kind of benefits are there. So we need to really check if that is feasible and possible and how to implement it in the final place. We cannot say that our current studied approach is the final one, but it's kind of starting point more.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that there could be a lot of benefit to this, especially if we start looking at AI and ML and XR type applications as they move out to the edge here. It's going to be kind of, I think, very pertinent that the cooling parts of this can handle these GPUs and whatnot, as we look to kind of move them out closer to the edge.
Sorry, John. Also to complement a little bit on what Samuli was saying. Also, we have to look at it from many different perspectives, because okay, we are adding the cooling side more components, but then if you are depending on air cooling, still we have to do cooling. And then, for example, if you are not decooling directly into the server, but then you have to see how is the cooling done on site and how is the air quality of the place that you're putting that. And this is something that can generate more problems. And then the liquid cooling might even be having a better reliability in that sense. And also, I think the OCP Advanced Cooling Facilities is doing a lot of work now together with the Uptime Institute to write some recommendations and some specs about how to do liquid cooling with reliability and with concurrent maintainability and all that. And I'm following those discussions, of course. And as Samuli said, we don't have a ready-made product yet. We're still studying this alternative, and we plan on writing that white paper to also get more feedback from the community in OCP, and how can we improve that and make that maybe a viable solution for some applications.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you foresee that would there be special requirements that need to come from the edge side of things in terms of feeding into, you know, this larger liquid cooling that's happening, you know, in other parts of OCP?
I'm not so sure right now. This is something that's ongoing still without, yeah, maybe some discussion might be needed. I don't have a ready-made answer now.
Okay. But you kind of talked about, um, you know, like would there be like impacts into like enclosures and things like that as well? You know, if we're able to, you know, be pumping out more heat out of the chassis and whatnot. You know, it
Yeah,
seems
yeah,
seemed to me that, you know, if we're talking about like what kind of enclosures and things, that also maybe now starts to also become a factor.
yes, yes. But then also, if you have more complexity on the side of the enclosures, then also you could be operating with higher power units, and then being able to cool those instead of having multiple units on one site. You could have one higher power unit that's more capable, and then that complexity might be made more reasonable. And also from the cooling itself, there's lots of benefits from the ability that you have to then operate with free cooling in some sites. And this is something that's also is a benefit that we see, but that uh, we need to, of course, investigate and see how it actually goes in practice.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have any other input that you can offer to the group around, you know, what other people were talking about, or, you know, what other kinds of things are going on at the regional summit there in Prague?
I did not attend the regional summit, but is a slide or the video online right now? I have to wait. Anyone knows it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tianji. What was
Oh
your
yeah,
question?
I did not personally attend the summit, the regional summit, but just want to know whether the summit is online right now. I'll have to wait.
Yeah, Craig, dude, there was that. Wasn't there that link?
Yeah. On the on YouTube on the OCP channel, there's
Okay,
all of the regional summit presentations are there. So there's a one playlist just for the Edge group where it'll play all of the sessions kind of as if you had been in the audience.
okay, sure, thank you.
Yeah, when I tried to post a link before, it didn't give me the playlist that I wanted. So I'm not sure. I can probably post the OCP channel, and then you can go to YouTube and click on the separate track for Edge.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Okay. Give me just a, I'll post that to the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also there was this discussion or this announcement that AWS is contributing a new Edge gateway specification. Has anybody seen that?
Yeah, I think that was a submission in the ECS group. My understanding is it was more of a switch. I think Celestica had produced a product for that gateway, but it was for an edge switch rather than the gateway was a little bit of a misnomer in that it was, you know, it didn't really specify an Ethernet switch. But I believe that specification is approved and it should be in the specification database on the OCP website.
Hey,
Okay.
hey, hey, Craig. Hey, John. It's Bijan. I was trying to lurk and not really interfere with your meeting much, but
Why do that? Welcome, please.
Yeah, but I have to leave in a little bit for another meeting. But so the Edge Gateway is interesting. So AWS contributed the Edge Gateway, and really the function of it is it is a gateway, not just a switch. So there's embedded switch cards that allow them to do switching, and that's a big part of what they do. But there's also CPU, um, and so that will allow them to do things like SASE or SD-WAN at that point. And there's also, kind of expansion, PCIe capability too, so you can add new things to it. But that, I think one of their workloads is, for example, AWS will deploy these, and they're going to eat their own dog food. They actually have ODMs making this, starting to make this. And I think Celestica has a design specification that they're going to submit. Should be in the IC's next meeting, I think. But so these boxes basically will go to their retail edge and allow them to control Wi-Fi. They also have like a lot of IoT devices like cameras and things like that. And also they have, they want to do, they're going to do like video image recognition and things like that. So there's it's a box and it's part of a service. So it's an interesting
So
thing.
is it like part of like Outpost?
It's different than Outpost, but it could eventually replace Outpost. It's like a
Okay.
different, yeah, it's like they targeted to a different problem really really. And that was like they were getting killed in retail because like there was no consistency in the environment, in the enterprise environments,
Right.
right?
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and they also, like, one of their expansion cards, they have switch cards, like I said, PoE cards, multi-gig cards. They also have a 5G card to use as backhaul. They have Wi-Fi that they can provide in the box for like management, like if you want to for a management network within the enterprise. So it's a very interesting Swiss Army knife of a box.
So it kind of normalizes all of these diverse enterprise environments to give them kind of a consistent capability set. Is that kind of a fair assessment of kind of where that would fit?
Yes, yeah, because that's their problem today is that every site is different, and so it's like a huge OpEx and CapEx problem, and they can't offer these, like, they want to do this. One example is they want to do this application called Just Walk Out in their retail stores, where you go into a small like a store kiosk type of thing, and you just, like, if you want water, you just pick it up and you walk out. And so the image recognition will understand which items you have in your hand and will debit your card for whatever you've picked up. And so it wasn't feasible for them to actually deploy that wide scale without having a standard, an IT standard, right?
Right.
So
That's interesting.
anyway, that's the background. It's a weird, interesting box.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So it would be kind of orthogonal to Outpost, not necessarily.
Right.
They kind of complement each other. It sounds like, and but like you could do more with this.
Right. Yeah, it's more edge,
It's
like
kind of for a different
Outpost,
function.
like near edge, and that gateway is more far edge type of thing,
Right. Interesting. Does anybody else have any topics they want to talk about the regional summit?
I will say the um, the regional summit had a lot of interesting tracks, and there was like was mentioned earlier, was a big cooling track. Um, there was also a lot of server tracks, and there was a lot of news around chiplets, which I think are very applicable to OpenEdge, by the way.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. where
I think
you could basically start to build kind of a customized resources at your edge sites, right? With this
well that
chiplet concept.
so that's the vision that I have, is that the core disaggregates and goes to the edge. So, and what's driving this is is AI, right? AI ML. These are the workloads that everybody wants to run at the edge. And
Right.
so, due to the laws of physics, you need to be able to do them closer to the edge than have centralized resources.
Yep.
So yeah, so this is driving a lot of change.
Interesting. Yeah, because that was an interesting point that was brought up. I don't know if it was maybe it was the last call. Was that we've been looking at trying to minimize and reduce processing power and all this stuff, but now all of a sudden with these customized resources, it sort of starts to flip the equation on its head, where now maybe we need these more powerful resources that kind of start to demand additional power, cooling, these types of things.
Absolutely. When I was first involved with when LTE first started rolling out, this a lot of excitement around local IP breakout, and so but the vision that the carriers had was like low power, low space, because everything was at a premium.
Right.
And this totally flips everything on its head. Now
Yep. Yep. Yes, it's definitely interesting. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments? Yeah, so
I
we
just want to say on the chat, we looks like Andy posted a spec for the gateway, enterprise gateway base spec, and then I posted one from the Enterprise Edge group on the DS1000 Ethernet access switch.
Okay.
That,
Yeah, I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my
that's
screen
okay.
here.
I mean, it's just you can. I think it'll be available offline as well.
Okay.
Yeah, since from description, it seems this one is for enterprise edge, not for telco. Yeah, look at Andy's description. It's like the brain for retail, the retail outlets.
correct. Yeah, it's not telco.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a different story. Thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's interesting to look at, because at least in my mind, I think it starts to blur between what is going to be on-prem, or what would you move to like the very, very far edge, and eventually and I think I brought this up the last time, is people don't necessarily want to be running their own IT center in say all these retail places. Like ideally you would get somebody who would come in, and maybe you could outsource this to, like you'd outsource other cloud stuff to, right? And so some of these things that you may start out in on-prem could be moved into the far edge types of things that somebody could offer a service, and get to John, you were talking about that standardized thing, right? Because that's the big challenge is back when I was working with enterprise IT things, it's like, yeah, you go to talk to these big box retailers, and there's no consistency from store to store of how their IT is done. So even in the big box retailers, it's a challenge for them because of this problem that you're talking about with Amazon was finding. Because like even within um, a specific chain, a lot of the ones I was dealing with, every store has its own P&L, and so everybody has different budgets that they can spend on IT, and some stores are running ancient hardware, some stuff that would had newer stuff. There was no consistency, and it made it really difficult to have be able to do anything interesting and new because there was no consistency.
About 10 years ago, I had we had very serious talks with Starbucks, and the discussion was to add small cells to all the Starbucks stores. So they would have like a, you know, Starbucks Wi-Fi and a small cell for 4G at that time.
Yeah.
It was, and it looked like it was going somewhere. It was very interesting, and everybody loved it. It was a great idea, and we had the technology on the telco side. But at the end of the day, each Starbucks store has a different backhaul. Each Starbucks store, you know, a different, you know, set of constraints, right? Like where they can
Yeah.
put you know, antennas and all kinds of things. And so the logistics turned out to be a nightmare. So honestly, if there was something like this back 10 years ago, you might be making 5G calls at Starbucks instead of going there for Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I saw the same thing. You know, at Walmart, every store was different. Like Papa John's, every single Papa John's thing had its own setup for how they were handling their IT, right? So like they would want to try to do things from a corporate directive, but it was impossible because, you know, of this, you know, every single site was completely different, right? And it was very difficult, if not impossible, to do anything from a corporate drive perspective because there was no consistency. You know, the same thing that this box, you know, the AWS is looking at is trying to solve.
I know AWS or Amazon has some design principle. If you look at their wavelengths or outpost, so when they work with Verizon, basically they want to get a 10K solution to Verizon. And it's not the enterprise side, but it's on a very good environment within telco DC side. So in that case, wavelengths or outpost, they only need to get a power line and one port for internet connectivity. So I haven't looked at this contribution for new edge gateway, but since it's going to be in the retail for the enterprise edge, so my speculation is still AWS only want to have a power line and one port for IP connectivity. So in that case, it's going to be different from what the telco, especially for the far edge, is asking for. Yeah, I haven't looked at the spec yet. I haven't looked at the purpose of AWS for new edge, but only try to speculate from their wavelengths and outpost design principle.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, if you look at the traditional web scalers, you know, they're coming from this very homogeneous concept where, you know, every cloud is just, you know, any region in the cloud is just like any other region in the cloud, and you can put your workload anywhere in these regions. And I think what's interesting with Edge is like what we started to talk about is that you want to start to customize what resources you'd have at specific edge places. So, you know, there's this kind of tension between this homogeneity of, you know, what people like, what the you know, the public cloud has kind of become, and then, you know, there's reasons why, you know, enterprise IT ends up the way it does is because there needs to be more flexibility there, and you know, I kind of see this edge as this kind of melding point where, you know, it gets a little bit sketchy in terms of, yes, you can't, you know, the homogeneity is great until it's not, because you need to start to do some customized things because of, you know, the specifics around like what location, what's around that, you know, area, these types of things. You know, what's the take rate? You know, if you're in a large metro, you know, and there's, you know, a lot of demand for, say, gaming for, you know, say in your college campuses or something, that's going to drive you to build out an edge site differently than maybe you do it, you know, in some you know, other area. And so that's where you need to start having to be able to understand the differences, you know, in your edges are built out different there.
Andy just posted he's having trouble with his audio, and so he posted into the chat. The gateway is interesting for retail, but also maybe any enterprise with a lot of remote sites to manage, many
Yeah.
of which won't be big enough for servers.
So it's still like the same design principle, like wavelengths or outpost for AWS. Yeah, seems AWS still want to do their own remote control or management. Okay, anyway.
And Tangi, I just posted from in the telco group, AT&T had contributed a customer CPE box,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it sounded like it kind of met some of your requirements about a single interface that would interface back to the provider, and then
No,
provide.
it's not. No, correct. It's not like that. What I have seen is like, cause 4 years back or 5 years back when AWS announced the wavelengths, and then later, when they at that time they announced the collaboration with Verizon. So later I talked to Verizon people and got to learn AWS just need one power line and one IP port from Verizon data center, and all others will be done by AWS themselves. So in that case, it's sort of like AWS will work as the integrated provider with both the software, hardware, and also service contract.
Right.
Yeah. So look at this one, enterprise new edge gateway for enterprise retail side, and then seems they are trying to do the similar things, but this time they want to deploy these things on the retail store. Still, they want to give a turnkey solution, hardware, software plus service contract.
I think.
Yeah. So anyway, I haven't looked at. I knew this announcement last month, but I haven't looked at it yet. So thank you.
Any other topics around the regional summit? Okay, and then so maybe I thought we could just kind of close off. We started talking about this need for GPUs and whatnot at the edge for XR and ML. I thought we had some pretty good discussions over the last month there. Has anybody had any further thoughts, or is this can we maybe put this topic to bed, or should we kind of keep it on the radar? What are people's thoughts here?
I have some thought, but it's something when I work with some people on a project to quantify some KPI or metrics for XPU or GPU XPUs. This is regarding some compute. We call the CAN, or we call CATS in IETF work, called the Compute Aware Traffic Steering. In that case, it's going to integrate both the networking metric and the compute metrics. So, networking metrics for routing, or we all know it, but now we try to introduce the compute metrics, like whatever, the memory, CPU, XPU, storage, all kind of things. We try to quantify, and then such that we can inject those things into, may not be into the routing domain, but at least give an overlay solution. So when working on that one, I work with some AI guys and try to quantify some KPIs or metrics for GPU for the edge part. I think this one will be deployed at edge data centers for edge services. So that is just something to share. This is very preliminary to quantify the metrics for different brands of GPUs, like from NVIDIA or from other companies. Yeah, because we suspect the consumption of GPU may not be on the linear relation with the capabilities provided by the consumed GPUs. Yeah, but we do not have the data yet.
So what you're saying is it's kind of bursty. It doesn't maybe just scale linearly
We do not know yet. Sorry about that. We just try. We're still doing the measuring right now. So yeah, we suspect it's not linear. Like suppose you have 100 GPU cores, and then you
Yeah.
consume 10%. You consume 10%, and then you may not just reach like 10% of the whole capabilities. So it's not, but just our suspicion, speculation. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's definitely going to make, dimensioning things, I think, interesting.
Right, seems like we try to get some comparison among different GPU when from GPUs from different vendors.
Well, and then like different workloads, like today, there's a pretty tight coupling between, you need this specific GPU with this software because there's just a tight coupling there, right? There's not
Right.
this that we don't have the genericism in general compute with these GPUs, right? So if you look at like the NVIDIA product roadmap, right? There's specific GPUs for AI/ML. There's other cards that are specific for XR type applications, right?
Right.
And so all of a sudden, again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about it's not really a homogenous thing. You're going to have to kind of figure out what workloads, and as the workloads change, have different resources in different places, perhaps, and then
Right.
figure out some way to scale these things where if you exceed the capabilities in one specific site, do you backhaul to do you have more of a mesh type architecture that you can backhaul to another edge site that has additional capacity, but you're still focused on reduction in latency and those kinds of things.
Right, exactly. You're exactly on the point here. Because at the very beginning, I mentioned about a project called CATS from the IETF side. It's called the Compute Aware Traffic Steering. So so it's going to integrate like the bandwidth with the latency, with the compute power, all kind of things together. Yeah. So the compute part, or one of the compute, is just like GPU capabilities that going to be provided. So.
Yeah, because we also talked about too is I think the specs right now and kind of the chassis and things we have for the edge are kind of limited in terms of how many cards can you slot into these things, and then how could you expand that? If I don't need additional compute and networking, but it's really just for these cards, do you have sort of like an auxiliary chassis that's really just PCI slots or something that lets you kind of expand those things out? And I think we kind of talked about that before. To kind of let you kind of build up these resources.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, just FYI, something is going on. So.
Yep. So do we still have any other thoughts around point number 3 here? Should we move on? Do we still have Bijan? Are you still here? Did you leave already? Sounds like he left already.
Hey, Bijan dropped a note into the chat that he had to join another call.
Oh, okay, because then that's sort of like the next topic. So he had suggested.
Oh, hang on, I'm sorry. Andy just said, without going back to topic and just for info, reading the gateway spec while listening, the OS on the gateway is expected to be only install Sonic, Dent, or ONL rather than it being a managed service platform. So I think he's saying that even though it has even though it has a CPU, that CPU's OS isn't expected to be installed as if it were an Ethernet switch, and then it would be running your typical open compute Ethernet or network layers Sonic, and then Dent or Open Network Linux. I think that's what he's saying, versus it being a compute box. But
So it's more like an appliance. It's more like an appliance. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so I think that if you read the spec, it has a CPU, an Intel small power. I want to say that it was the new Atom, whatever that layer, a D Intel chip. So it's not a very high-powered CPU that's really meant to manage the Ethernet resources. So it has a Broadcom Ethernet chip. So it does give you the ability to have all of those edge, like in a retail, all your point of sale, all of your surveillance cameras, whether they're wired or wireless, and provide power over Ethernet to those devices, and then to have a connection back. But then the ability to have advanced networking functions on there, such as Sonic or Dent, for using in that. Again, that's, it's not my spec. I don't really I've not been following that group as closely as I would like to. And then Andy just said, yes, to me, it looks like it's a switch with some extra smarts rather than being compute.
So could you have something similar that sits in a retail, right? Because you're going to plug in the cameras and the point of sale stuff, but you don't necessarily want to have all the IT. So like you would backhaul this to an edge site, and let that be, that could be like the on-site part, the minimum stuff that you would need for on-site, but you could backhaul this to like a far edge type.
Well, provided you have enough bandwidth. Typically,
Yeah.
you would think that you would want to somehow aggregate all of those data streams and not just stream raw data from a retail site to a farther location. But without really knowing the
Craig, you kind of broke up.
yeah, I'm sorry. Target was kind of focusing some of this on their retail use case, and they would have a gateway that would do or a compute server that would do processing that then would feed back to the uplink. I'm not sure if they changed that by the time the spec came out, or so I
Yeah.
don't know. But
So in this case, this AWS one is inferior to the AT&T CPE. I think AT&T CPE can provide both compute and the switch.
yes, and the AT&T had several. They had the concept of switchable modules, so you could have Ethernet, or you could also have Ethernet and wireless. And then it had your typical telco kind of things like last gas signaling when it was going down for a problem or something. And so it was a much more telco focused
Right.
compute gateway, if you will, CPE device, versus an enterprise edge device that has switching and networking capabilities. So AT&T's was more just a gateway, like a router, a software-based router in a CPE form factor.
But also it provide compute, but it's like a combined devices.
True.
Device.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. I'm not sure how AWS one is going to be.
Telco. Yeah, I just posted that because you had said something about the telco requirements, and that server that CPE was designed for telco use cases by AT&T. That was all.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how AWS one will be deployed in the scenario I can give you. In mainland China, we have a case that going to scale up to 30,000 small enterprise company like 7-Eleven, and then you're going to deploy the small servers on the store of 7-Eleven, like a small store, and then it's going to scale up to 30,000 stores. So those stores will be connected through some networks. Yeah, so I don't know how this one going to to be deployed, or yeah, how this one could match with those type of scenarios. So
Right. So Andy just posted again. Yes, that seems to be the scenario. This is for the stuff you have to do at a retail site and can't put at regional cloud. The uplinks are up to 4 by 25 gig. The main difference with AT&T thing is probably fairly large PoE capacity.
you have to do it in retail, cannot put in regional cloud.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the AT&T CPE though had any PoE capabilities. I think that this enterprise gateway does have remote PoE. That was one of the requirements originally for that retail use case, was PoE for the terminals, point of sale terminals, and also some of the video surveillance.
Yeah. Well, and that's why Wi-Fi kind of runs out of gas in some places, right? Because if you have a lot of other things that are consuming that unlicensed spectrum.
Yeah, and Andy said he put another comment, said up to 100 watts per port in case you want Ethernet LED lighting. Smiley face. So I guess not
can you
only
make it flash all the colors and all that kind of thing?
yeah, right. Not only could you use it for PoE and video surveillance cameras, but you could do your lighting as well.
Nice.
Okay.
Anybody else have any more thoughts on that? All right. Well, I see we only got like 8 minutes left, so I don't know if it makes sense to start topic number 4, because I think that Bijan kind of proposed that like 2 months ago, but I think that could be a whole big interesting discussion. So I don't know if it makes sense to start that now. Maybe we save that for next month. What do y'all think?
Can it be done within 10 minutes? I have to leave at 11.
No, I mean, I think this is some interesting stuff that we could talk about. So, but let's not start it, because I don't think we'll just kind of start getting into it. So maybe we'll park that one and roll it over to next month.
Hey, John, why don't you post that link to the mail list, and then everyone could review that topic. So next time we could.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay,
And
so
then
yeah,
we
so
can
I'll.
have discussion on the list as well, right? I mean, that's what
Yep.
they're for.
Yep. All right. So yeah, I'll post this one, and everybody can kind of take a look, and then maybe we can have a bigger discussion next month around that. And then, so I've got queued up 2 future speakers and topics. I'll see if maybe I can get one or maybe both. I'll see how long they think they'll need for next month. So Jean-Paul Smets from Rapid Space, and then this MyTech Whitestone. They also wanted to get some time on our call to talk about that as well. So I'll work with them to slot them in here. Does anybody else have any other things that maybe we could kind of put on this list? If you do, feel free to send them to me, because I'll just kind of keep this agenda list rolling here, and we'll kind of have a set of things that we can discuss going forward.
Hi, it's Ildiko here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm running GoToMeeting in my browser and haven't used this one for a while, and it looks completely different, so wanted to make sure it works. So I'm with the Open Infra Foundation, and I'm the community manager of a project called Starling X. I think we mentioned it on on the call last month.
Yeah.
And that is a project that is applicable at the edge as well. They are looking into supporting small footprint hardware options and looking into different hardware architectures and those kind of things. So it is an open source project. So I would be happy to talk about it a little bit more at one of the upcoming calls if you all think that it would be beneficial to look into it and see how maybe that software platform could work with the hardware proposals that you all are discussing and building on in this group.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can put you on the schedule too. And that would be if you want to. I know about it. I'm not sure how many other people know about Starling X, but yeah, I think it would definitely helpful to kind of talk about it.
Okay. We have the Open Infrastructure Summit coming up next month from the 13th to the 15th. It's in Vancouver, so if anyone would like to pop by, you are more than welcome, and we would be happy to have you. And I think that also is probably colliding with the next call, so whatever timing works for you all the best after June, I'm happy to prepare some slides and we can also have a conversation.
Okay, yeah. If you can, maybe you can send me when would be a good time for you, and I can slot you in on the agenda.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Anybody have anything else they'd like to talk about before we run out of time here? Oh, now I can see Andy. Andy, we got to fix your microphone. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, then I think I'll give you back 3 minutes here, and appreciate everybody's time, and look forward to talking to you all next month. Ah.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right.
Bye bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.